The silence that followed the laughter was what did it, not the video itself, though watching myself edited into a stumbling fool while 200 guests was exquisite torture. Not even Evangeline's delighted shriek of, "Oh my God, that's so perfect," as she clutched her new husband's arm. It was the moment after, when the room went quiet, and I felt every eye tracking my movement toward the exit. They thought the show was over, but every dollar I'd poured into this wedding, every humiliation I'd swallowed, it was all about to pay dividends they never saw coming. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories. I was telling my cousin Mike about the new carburetor I'd installed in the Mustang when the DJ tapped the microphone. Wedding small talk, you know how it goes. Mike nodded along, probably thinking about his own garage projects, while I kept one eye on Evangeline across the room. She looked radiant, worth every penny of the dress, even if it meant I'd be eating sandwiches for lunch for the next 3 months. If I could have everyone's attention. The DJ's voice boomed over the chatter. The happy couple has prepared some special video messages. Mike raised his beer. Here we go with the sappy stuff. But he was smiling. Everyone was. This was the good part of weddings. The memories, the laughter, the stories that make you love someone. The lights dimmed and conversations died down. I found myself straightening my tie, that automatic father of the bride reflex. Everything had to be perfect. I'd made sure of it. The venue, the flowers, the photographer who cost more than my first car, all of it planned and paid for with the kind of meticulous care I usually reserve for rebuilding engines. The screen lit up with Vincent's fraternity brothers doing some ridiculous drinking song. The crowd laughed. Then came Evangeline's college roommate, tears in her eyes, talking about how she'd always known Vincent was the one. More laughter, a few ahs from the women. I was starting to relax. This was nice. Normal. The kind of thing you see in movies, except it was my daughter up there, my little girl who used to help me change oil in the driveway. Then Vincent grabbed the microphone. Something about his expression made my stomach twitch. That look he got when he was about to say something he thought was clever. "Before we continue," he announced, his voice carrying across the room with practiced confidence, "I want to give special thanks to our biggest sponsor." The confused murmur that rippled through the crowd should have been my warning, but I was still thinking like a father, not like a target. I thought maybe he was going to thank me properly, publicly, for everything I'd done to make this day happen. There I was from 2 months ago, Vincent's phone capturing me in their driveway after I'd just gotten the call that my father had died. I was shaking, trying to hold myself together, when I asked if Evangeline could come to the funeral with me. But Vincent had edited out my explanation, just showing me breaking down. I can't do this alone. I need my daughter with me. While I wiped my nose on my sleeve like a child. Cut to me at their dinner party the night I'd been laid off after 23 years, trying to explain why I couldn't split the restaurant bill. The video showed only my red face and stammering words about being a little short this month, not the dev losing my career. But the cruelest cut was from last spring. My brother had called to tell me Mom was in the hospital, might not make it through the night. I'd rushed to Evangeline's house, still in my work clothes, desperate to tell her she needed to say goodbye to her grandmother. Vincent filmed me from the doorway as I stood there sobbing, begging them to drive to the hospital with me. "She's asking for you, baby. She keeps saying your name." The video made it look like I was having some kind of breakdown, completely stripping away the context that my mother was dying and wanted to see her granddaughter one last time. Each clip had been carefully selected, edited to strip away any dignity I might have had. The laughter started uncomfortable but grew louder. 200 people who had eaten my food and drunk my champagne were now roaring with amusement at my most vulnerable moments. But the sound that cut through everything else, the one that hit me like a physical blow, was Evangeline's laugh, pure and delighted, without a trace of embarrassment or sympathy. She was clutching Vincent's arm, throwing her head back with genuine joy at seeing her father humiliated. The laughter was still echoing when I felt Mike's hand tighten into a fist beside me. His whole body had gone rigid, and I could see the vein in his temple starting to throb, the same one that used to show up before he got into fights back in high school, 30 years later, and he still had my back. That son of a bitch, he muttered under his breath, already shifting his weight forward like he was getting ready to stand. I'm going to. No. I caught his wrist before he could move, my fingers wrapping around the thick muscle of his forearm. The word came out steady, controlled. Don't. Mike turned to look at me, his eyes blazing with an anger I wasn't sure I felt yet. Maybe the shock was still too fresh, or maybe something else was happening inside me. Something cooler, more calculating. Josh, you can't just let him. I said don't. I squeezed his arm once, then released it. The laughter was starting to die down now, people wiping their eyes and looking around for what came next. Time to give them something to remember. I stood up slowly, smoothing down my jacket, the same jacket I'd bought specifically for this day, the one that had cost me a week's groceries. My legs felt steady beneath me, which surprised me. I'd expected my knees to shake, expected to feel small and humiliated. Instead, I felt strangely calm, like I was watching myself from a distance. Vincent was still grinning when I approached him, the microphone dangling loose in his hand as he basked in the aftermath of his little show. He looked so pleased with himself, so certain that everything was still going according to his plan. Vincent, I said, loud enough for the people nearby to hear. Do you really think that was funny? His grin faltered for just a second, but then it came back full force, accompanied by that laugh of his, the one that had always grated on my nerves. Come on, Josh, lighten up. It's all in good fun. Everyone's having a great time. He gestured toward the crowd, many of whom were still chuckling and wiping tears from their eyes. Look around. People loved it. I could feel eyes turning toward us, conversations stopping mid-sentence as people realized something was happening. The atmosphere in the room was shifting, like air pressure changing before a storm. Even the DJ seemed to sense it, lowering the music that had started playing again. You're right, I said, reaching for the microphone. Vincent hesitated for just a moment, probably wondering if I was going to make some kind of speech. But then he handed it over with a patronizing pat on my shoulder. I looked out at the crowd. All these faces I recognized, people who had eaten at my table, borrowed my tools, asked for my help over the years. Mrs. Whitmore from down the street, still holding her champagne glass, my coworkers from the plant, Evangeline's sorority sisters, Vincent's fraternity brothers, still snickering among themselves. The microphone crackled as I brought it to my lips. You know what? Vincent's absolutely right. I can see how much fun everyone's having. My voice carried clearly through the speakers, each word deliberate and measured. And I really can't blame any of you for laughing. After all, when the entertainment is this good, who wouldn't enjoy the show? A few uncertain chuckles rippled through the crowd, but they died quickly. People were starting to look uncomfortable, sensing something in my tone that they couldn't quite place. But here's the thing about clowns, I continued, my eyes finding Evangeline's face in the crowd. She was no longer laughing. Eventually, they have to leave the circus. I could see confusion spreading across faces, the subtle shift from amusement to unease. The silence was becoming oppressive, broken only by the sound of my own voice echoing back from the speakers. So I want to thank you all for such a memorable evening. Really, I'll treasure this moment for the rest of my life. I paused, letting that sink in. But the clown is tired now, and it's time for him to go home. With that, I dropped the microphone. It hit the marble floor with a sharp crack that echoed through the sudden silence, the feedback screech making several people wince. Mike was already standing when I turned around, his jaw set in that familiar way that meant he'd made up his mind about something. He didn't say a word, just fell into step beside me as I walked toward the exit. Our footsteps seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet that had fallen over the reception. Behind us, I could hear Vincent's voice, trying to recapture the mood. Okay, well, let's get this party back on track. But it sounded forced, desperate. The damage was done. As we reached the doors, I could feel the weight of 200 pairs of eyes on my back. They were all watching the clown leave, just like I'd promised. But something told me this particular show was far from over. The cool night air hit my face as we stepped outside, and I realized I was still holding myself together by sheer will. Mike was quiet for the first few steps, but I could feel the anger radiating off him like heat from an engine. Josh, he finally said, his voice tight. You can't just let this slide. What they did in there, that was beyond the line. Way beyond. I kept walking toward the parking garage, my dress shoes clicking against the pavement with mechanical precision. I know. I mean it. Mike grabbed my arm, stopping me under a streetlight. His face was flushed, and I could see he was still processing what he'd witnessed. That wasn't just some stupid joke. That was calculated. Cruel. They planned this, man. They sat down and planned to humiliate you in front of everyone you know. The word humiliate hung in the air between us. It was the right word, and hearing it out loud made something sharp twist in my chest. I looked at Mike, my cousin, my oldest friend, the guy who'd stood up for me when we were kids and was still trying to do it now. You're right, I said quietly, and nobody's going to tolerate it. Something in my tone must have registered with him because his grip on my arm loosened. What are you thinking? I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number I needed. I'm thinking it's time to make some calls. The phone rang twice before a recorded voice picked up. Thank you for calling First National Bank. Our offices are currently closed, but if this is an urgent matter regarding an existing loan or mortgage. I pressed the option for urgent matters and waited. Mike watched me, his eyebrows raised. This is Linda in Emergency Services. How can I help you? Hi, Linda. This is Joshua Matthews. I'm a co-signer on mortgage account number. I rattled off the number I'd memorized 2 years ago when I'd helped Evangeline and Vincent qualify for their house. I need to schedule an appointment tomorrow to discuss removing my name from the loan. There was a pause. I see. And this is regarding the property on Maple Street? That's correct. Mr. Matthews, I should let you know that removing a cosigner typically requires the remaining borrowers to requalify for the loan amount. Would you like me to schedule you with one of our loan officers? Mike's eyes widened as he realized what I was doing. Yes, please, as early as possible tomorrow. I have an opening at 9 a.m. with Mr. Richardson. Would that work? Perfect. I hung up and slipped the phone back into my pocket. Mike was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Jesus, Josh. Their house? My guarantee. I started walking again, feeling lighter somehow. My name on their mortgage, my liability if they default. We reached my car, and I fumbled with the keys for a moment before getting the door open. The interior smelled like the air freshener Evangeline had given me last Christmas, vanilla and sandalwood. Everything reminded me of her, of them, of how stupid I'd been to think I was part of a family instead of just a financial resource. The drive home passed in a blur of streetlights and late-night traffic. Mike followed in his own car, probably making sure I was okay, probably still processing what had happened. I appreciated that he didn't try to call me, didn't try to talk me out of what I was planning. He understood. My house felt different when I walked in. Quieter, maybe. Or maybe it was just me that had changed. I hung up my jacket, the expensive one I'd bought for my daughter's wedding, and loosened my tie. The events of the evening kept replaying in my mind like a movie I couldn't turn off. Vincent's grin as he announced the sponsor's greatest hits. The carefully edited clips designed to strip away my dignity. The laughter that built and built until it might crush me. And Evangeline, my little girl, laughing hardest of all. My phone buzzed against the coffee table where I'd set it down. Evangeline's name lit up the screen, accompanied by the photo I'd taken of her last Christmas, smiling and holding a mug of hot chocolate I'd made for her. I watched it ring until it went to voicemail. It buzzed again almost immediately. Another call from Evangeline, then a text. Dad, can we please talk? I turned the phone face down and headed for the bedroom. Tomorrow, I had a 9 a.m. appointment at the bank. Tonight, I needed sleep. Real sleep, not the kind where you lie awake replaying every humiliation, every moment you should have stood up for yourself, but didn't. For the first time in months, I thought I might actually get it. The bank smelled like fresh coffee and subtle anxiety. Mr. Richardson, the loan officer, was younger than I'd expected, probably closer to Vincent's age than mine. He had that polite, professional demeanor that banking people perfect, but I could see the curiosity in his eyes as he pulled up the account. So, Mr. Matthews, you're looking to remove yourself as co-signer on this mortgage, he said, studying his computer screen. I have to ask, is there a particular reason for this decision? I'd rehearsed this conversation during the sleepless hours before dawn. Let's just say my relationship with the borrowers has changed significantly. Richardson nodded like he'd heard this story before. I understand. Well, the good news is that we can absolutely process this request. The challenge will be for Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell to requalify for the loan amount without your income and credit backing them. What are their options? They'll need to either refinance with another lender, find a different cosigner, or he paused, consulting something on his screen. Well, based on their current income, they'd likely need to sell the property. The loan amount is substantial relative to what they qualified for independently. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. The house had been Evangeline's dream, the white colonial with the big front porch where she'd planned to hang flower baskets and host family dinners. I'd co-signed because I wanted her to have that dream. How long do they have to make arrangements? We'll send official notification today, giving them 30 days to provide alternative guarantees or begin refinancing proceedings. 20 minutes later, I was walking back to my car with a folder full of paperwork and a lighter feeling in my chest. The official wheels were in motion. There would be no taking this back quietly, no pretending it was all a misunderstanding. My phone started ringing before I even reached the parking garage. Vincent's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Another call, this time Evangeline. I declined it. A text from Vincent. Josh, what the hell? The bank just called us. Another from Evangeline. Dad, please call me back. There has to be some mistake. I drove home in silence, ignoring the constant buzzing of my phone. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had 12 missed calls and 17 text messages. The desperation in their messages was almost palpable, growing more frantic with each unanswered attempt. I was barely through my front door when I heard car doors slamming in my driveway. Through the window, I could see Vincent's BMW parked behind my car, effectively blocking me in. Evangeline was already walking up the front steps, her face flushed and her hair disheveled like she'd been running her hands through it. The doorbell rang 3 times in rapid succession. Dad, I know you're in there. Please, we just need to talk. I took my time walking to the door, straightening my shoulders before I opened it. Evangeline's eyes were red-rimmed, and Vincent stood behind her with his arms crossed, trying to look authoritative but mostly looking scared. Can we come in? Evangeline's voice was small, uncertain, in a way I hadn't heard since she was a child. I stepped aside and let them into my living room, the same room where they'd sat countless times for family dinners, birthday celebrations, holiday mornings. Now it felt like foreign territory for all of us. Dad, what's going on? Evangeline perched on the edge of the couch like she might need to run. The bank called and said you're removing your name from our mortgage. That has to be some kind of mistake, right? No mistake. I remained standing, looking down at both of them. I requested to be removed as cosigner this morning. Vincent leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. Josh, look, if this is about last night, it is about last night. Then we need to clear the air here. It was just a harmless prank, okay? Wedding humor. People do this stuff all the time. I felt my jaw tighten. Harmless. Yes, Evangeline jumped in, her voice desperate. Dad, it was just silly videos. Everyone was laughing. Everyone was having fun. It wasn't meant to hurt anyone. Everyone was having fun, I repeated slowly, including you. She blinked, confusion flickering across her face. What do you mean? I mean, you laughed, Evangeline? Like, you laughed harder than anyone else in that room. The words came out quieter than I'd intended, but they seemed to hit her like a physical blow. Your husband showed videos of me at my most vulnerable moments, when my father died, when I lost my job, when my mother was dying, and you thought it was hilarious. The color drained from her face. Dad, I didn't realize that those moments had context, that there were reasons I was upset. I shook my head. Or did you just not care? Vincent stood up, his politician's smile sliding into place. Come on, Josh, you're blowing this way out of proportion. It was a wedding reception, not a documentary. People expect entertainment. Entertainment. I looked at him, really looked at him, for maybe the first time since he'd started dating my daughter. You turned my grief into entertainment. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I could feel my voice getting steadier, more certain, And maybe I could forgive you, Vincent. You don't owe me anything. But my daughter? I turned back to Evangeline, who was now crying silently. My daughter, who I've sacrificed everything for, who I've supported and protected and provided for her entire life, she laughed at her father's pain. Dad, please. That was disrespect, Evangeline. Pure and simple. And I'm not taking a step back from the consequences. Mike didn't waste any time. By Tuesday afternoon, he'd called half the family, and by Wednesday evening, my phone was ringing nonstop. But this time, it wasn't Evangeline and Vincent begging for forgiveness. Josh, it's your sister Carol. Mike told me what happened at the wedding. Her voice was tight with anger. I can't believe what that little bastard did to you. I was sitting in my kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Carol, No, listen to me. I've been wanting to say something about Vincent for months, but I didn't think it was my place. Remember at Easter when he made those comments about your truck being vintage in front of everyone? And that time at Mom's birthday when he kept correcting your stories? I did remember. I'd brushed it off as generational differences, maybe a little social awkwardness. I thought he was just being a condescending ass is what he was being. And we all saw it, Josh. We all saw how he treated you, but you seemed so happy that Evangeline had found someone, and she sighed heavily. We should have said something. The calls kept coming. Uncle Ray, who rarely spoke unless it was about baseball or the weather, called to tell me he'd always thought Vincent was too slick by half. My cousin Janet, who I hadn't heard from in 6 months, left a voicemail saying she'd never forgotten how Vincent had mocked my pronunciation of quinoa at their anniversary party, making me feel like an idiot for trying to be health conscious. But it was my brother Tom's call that hit the hardest. You know what pisses me off most? Tom's voice was gravely with anger. I lent that kid $5,000 2 years ago when he said he was between paychecks. You think I ever saw a dime of that back? Tom, you never told me, because he asked me not to mention it to you or Evangeline, said it would be embarrassing. Now I'm thinking he just didn't want you to know he was hitting up the whole family for money. A cold knot formed in my stomach. What do you mean, the whole family? I started making calls after Mike filled me in. Josh, that kid has borrowed money from at least 6 of us, always with some story about temporary cash flow problems or unexpected expenses, always with the same request to keep it quiet. The picture that emerged over the next few hours was devastating. Vincent had systematically worked his way through my relatives, always with a sob story, always with a promise to pay it back, always with a request for discretion. Uncle Ray, $3,000 for car repairs. Cousin Janet, $1,500 for medical bills. Even Mike had lent him money, $800 that Vincent claimed he needed for Evangeline's birthday surprise. The thing is, Mike told me when he called back that evening, we all felt sorry for him. Kid grew up in foster care, no family of his own. We figured we were helping Evangeline by taking care of her husband. The foster care detail explained a lot. It was why we'd all made excuses for his behavior, why we'd overlooked the subtle put-downs and the casual disrespect. Vincent had learned early how to play the sympathy card, how to make people want to take care of him, and we'd all fallen for it. Meanwhile, according to Carol, who had a friend who worked at the same bank, Evangeline and Vincent were making desperate rounds to financial institutions across town. Their credit wasn't strong enough to qualify for the mortgage amount without a cosigner, and my withdrawal had triggered an immediate reevaluation of their loan status. They've got 30 days to find another guarantor or come up with a substantial down payment to reduce the loan amount, Carol reported with barely concealed satisfaction. Satisfaction. Guess who they've been calling? The answer apparently was everyone. Tom got a call on Thursday, Uncle Ray on Friday. Vincent's approach was the same each time. A heartfelt explanation about a family misunderstanding, followed by a request for financial assistance, just until things get sorted out. The amounts he was asking for weren't small either. He needed someone to co-sign for nearly $200,000, or he needed $60,000 in cash to bring down the principal. I told him I'd rather set my money on fire, Uncle Ray reported with grim satisfaction. At least that way I'd get some heat out of it. The rejections were swift and unanimous. Word had spread about the wedding incident. about the years of borrowed money and casual disrespect. The family that had once been willing to overlook Vincent's flaws out of sympathy for his background was now closing ranks around me. But it was Janet who delivered the most damning piece of information. "You know what's really rich?" she said during one of our evening calls. "Vincent told me last year that you were getting a little senile and that he and Evangeline were worried about your financial decisions. Said you'd been making some questionable investments and they were trying to help you manage your money better." The betrayal cut deeper than anything that had happened at the wedding. They hadn't just mocked me publicly, they'd been undermining me privately, planting seeds of doubt about my competence, my mental acuity, my ability to manage my own affairs. All while living in a house I'd helped them buy, driving cars I'd helped them finance, enjoying a lifestyle built on my financial backing. "Josh," Mike's voice brought me back to the present. I'd been staring out my kitchen window for God knows how long, watching the sunset paint my neighbor's fence orange. "You still there?" "Yeah, I'm here. Look, I know this is hard to hear, but you need to know how deep this goes. That kid didn't just disrespect you at the wedding. He's been working a long con on this whole family for years." I thought about Evangeline, probably sitting in her dream house right now, finally understanding that her fairy tale life had been built on borrowed time and borrowed money. I thought about Vincent, that charming smile he'd perfected, the way he could make people want to help him even as he was taking advantage of them. "The worst part," I said quietly, "is that she was in on it." Mike was silent for a moment. "Maybe not the money stuff, but the disrespect? The way they talked about you behind your back? Yeah, Josh, she was in on that." As I hung up the phone, I realized that the family unity I'd been afraid of losing was stronger than ever. It just didn't include the two people I'd thought it was all about. Evangeline came alone on Saturday morning, driving her little Honda instead of Vincent's BMW. I watched her through the kitchen window as she sat in the driveway for nearly 5 minutes, gripping the steering wheel like she was trying to summon courage. When she finally walked to my door, her shoulders were hunched in a way that reminded me of the little girl who used to come to me after nightmares. "Dad?" Her voice was small when I opened the door. "Can we talk? Just you and me?" I let her in, noting how she looked around the living room like she was seeing it for the first time. Maybe she was. Maybe she'd never really looked at the secondhand furniture I'd made comfortable, the family photos covering every surface, the evidence of a life built around loving her. "Coffee?" I offered, falling back on the automatic courtesies that had carried us through smaller conflicts. "Please." She perched on the edge of the couch, twisting her wedding ring around her finger. "Dad, I need you to know that I never meant for things to go this far. The video thing, I know it hurt you, and I'm sorry. I am, but losing the house, that's our whole life." I handed her a mug, watching her face as she wrapped her hands around it like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "Evangeline, do you know how much money your husband has borrowed from this family?" She looked up, confusion flickering in her eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Vincent has taken money from Uncle Ray, from Tom, from Janet, from Mike, thousands of dollars over the past 2 years." I settled into my chair, studying her face as the information sank in. "Did you know about any of that?" The color drained from her cheeks. No, that's not possible. Vincent would have told me." "Would he?" I pulled out the notebook where I'd been keeping track of the family's revelations. 3,000 from Ray for car repairs, 1,500 from Janet for medical bills, 5,000 from Tom because he was between paychecks, 800 from Mike for your birthday surprise. Each figure hit her like a physical blow. I could see her mentally calculating, trying to reconcile this information with the man she'd married. "But we don't. Our cars are fine. We haven't had any medical emergencies. And my birthday, he took me to that expensive restaurant and said he'd been saving up." The pieces were falling into place behind her eyes, and I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness watching her world reshape itself around this new reality. "There's more." I kept my voice gentle but firm. "He's been telling people that I'm getting senile, that you two are worried about my mental state, my financial decisions." That one broke something in her. She set down the coffee mug with shaking hands and pressed her palms against her eyes. Oh, God. Oh, God, Dad, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the money. But you knew about the other things, didn't you? The comments about my age, my abilities? She was crying now, silent tears that she tried to wipe away as quickly as they fell. He said, he said we needed to protect you from making bad decisions, that you were too trusting, too generous. I thought he was looking out for you. The hurt in her voice was real, but it didn't erase the years of small betrayals, the gradual erosion of my dignity in my own daughter's eyes. Evangeline, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about money, and it's not just about that video. Your husband has been systematically undermining me for years, and you've been helping him do it. I haven't. You have. I leaned forward, making sure she was looking at me. Every time you laughed when he called me old-fashioned, every time you agreed that I needed guidance with modern technology, every time you treated me like I was a burden instead of your father. She was sobbing openly now, her carefully applied makeup running in dark streaks down her cheeks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Dad. I love you. You have to know that I love you. I do know that. But love without respect isn't enough anymore. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of revelations settling between us like smoke. Finally, she looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. What do you want me to do? I want you to leave him. The words hung in the air like a challenge. She stared at me, mouth slightly open, as if I'd suggested something impossible. Dad, I can't. He's my husband. We're married. He's a con artist who's been using you to get to this family's money. He loves me. He loves what you represent. Stability. A family. Financial backing. I felt the familiar heaviness in my chest, the weight of having to be the adult when she should be old enough to see clearly. Evangeline, a man who truly loved you would never have humiliated your father in public. She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window and back. I can't just throw away my marriage based on family gossip and misunderstandings. Family gossip? The phrase stung more than I'd expected. Is that what you think this is? I think Vincent made some mistakes, okay? Maybe he borrowed money he shouldn't have. Maybe he didn't handle the video thing well, but that doesn't make him evil. I realized then that I'd lost her. Not just temporarily, not just until she came to her senses. She was choosing him over everything, over truth, over family, over me. The knowledge settled in my stomach like a stone. I'm calling a family meeting, I said quietly. Tomorrow afternoon. Everyone's going to be here. Dad, please don't. Vincent needs to hear what everyone has to say, and you need to hear it too. She left without saying goodbye, and I spent the rest of the day making phone calls. Sunday at 2 o'clock, my living room was fuller than it had been since last Christmas. Mike sat in my usual chair, his jaw tight with controlled anger. Carol had claimed the spot on the couch closest to the door, like she might need to prevent someone from escaping. Tom leaned against the wall, arms crossed, looking like he was ready for a fight. Uncle Ray, despite being nearly 80, had driven himself over and now sat ramrod straight in a dining room chair we'd brought in for extra seating. Janet paced near the window, too agitated to sit still. Vincent and Evangeline arrived 20 minutes late, probably hoping some people would have left. Vincent had put on his best clothes, the charcoal suit I'd helped him buy for job interviews, polished shoes, that practiced smile that looked strained around the edges. Evangeline stayed close to his side, her hand on his arm like she was either supporting him or restraining herself. Well, Vincent said, looking around the room with forced cheerfulness, this is quite a gathering. What's the occasion? The silence that greeted him was answer enough. Mike stood up slowly, and I could see Vincent's smile falter as he recognized the expression on my cousin's face. The occasion, Mike said, his voice deadly quiet, is that we're tired of pretending we don't see what you are. Vincent's laugh sounded hollow in the packed room. Come on, Mike, if this is about the wedding thing, shut up. The words came from Tom, sharp and final. Just shut your mouth and listen for once. I'd never heard Tom use that tone with anyone except his own teenage sons when they'd done something truly dangerous. Vincent's mouth snapped closed, and I saw Evangeline flinch beside him. $3,000, Uncle Ray said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd commanded respect for 8 decades. That's what you took from me. Car repairs, you said. Funny thing is, I asked my mechanic neighbor about your car when I saw you last month. Runs like a dream, he said. Not a thing wrong with it. Vincent opened his mouth to respond, but Carol cut him off. 1,500 from me. Medical bills that don't exist. Her voice was getting louder, angrier. You looked me in the eye and lied about being sick, Vincent. Do you understand how sick that is? 5,000, Tom added, pushing himself off the wall. $5,000 I lent you because I felt sorry for some kid who grew up without a family, and you used that sympathy like a weapon. Janet finally stopped pacing and turned to face Vincent directly. 800 from Mike, 3,000 from Ray, 1,500 from Carol, 5,000 from Tom. That's over $17,000, Vincent. $17,000 you've stolen from this family. The word stolen hit the room like a slap. Evangeline made a small sound of distress, but Vincent's face was changing, the practiced charm melting away to reveal something harder underneath. I didn't steal anything, he said, his voice rising. Those were loans. I never said I wouldn't pay them back. When? Mike's question was simple, direct. When were you planning to pay us back? Because some of those loans are 2 years old. Vincent looked around the room, perhaps realizing for the first time that he was completely outnumbered. I've been having some cash flow issues. Bullshit. The profanity from Uncle Ray shocked everyone into silence. The old man never swore, not even when he'd cut his thumb nearly off with a table saw. Cash flow issues don't buy BMWs and designer clothes. You want to know what I think? Janet stepped closer, her finger pointed at Vincent's chest. I think you've been planning this from the beginning, Chuck. I think you saw Evangeline and saw dollar signs. A girl with a devoted father and a big family, all of us working class people who'd be impressed by your college education and your smooth talk. That's not, Vincent started, but she wasn't finished. You've been working us like marks at a carnival, Vincent, taking our money, undermining Josh behind his back, making us all feel sorry for the poor orphan boy who just needed a little help. I watched my daughter during this exchange, saw her face cycle through disbelief, shame, and finally a kind of desperate determination. When Vincent reached for her hand, she didn't pull away. This is all just a misunderstanding, she said, her voice shaky but defiant. You're all being cruel. Vincent made some mistakes, but he's still my husband. The room fell silent. Mike looked at me with something like pity in his eyes. Evangeline, Carol said gently, honey, we're trying to help you see. See what? That my own family wants to destroy my marriage? Evangeline's voice was getting stronger, more certain. Vincent isn't perfect, but neither are any of us. He'll pay everyone back. We'll figure it out. With what money? Tom asked bluntly. You can't even qualify for your mortgage without Josh's help. We'll manage. How? Mike's question hung in the air. Vincent squeezed Evangeline's hand and stepped forward slightly, like he was protecting her. We'll figure it out. We don't need your help. The irony of that statement, coming from a man who'd built his entire lifestyle on our help, wasn't lost on anyone in the room. I stood up slowly, feeling every eye turn toward me. Vincent, you have 30 days to start making arrangements to pay back every penny you owe to this family. Every penny. And if I don't? The challenge in his voice surprised me, but maybe it shouldn't have. A cornered animal will always show its teeth. Then we'll explore other options. My voice was calm, final. Legal options. Evangeline gasped. Dad, you can't. I can. We all can. I looked around the room at faces hardened by betrayal and disappointment. This family has been generous to you, Vincent, more generous than you deserved. But generosity has limits. Vincent's mask slipped completely then. You people act like you're so high and mighty, but what are you really? A bunch of blue-collar nobodies who peaked in high school. I brought class to this family. I brought education, sophistication. You brought debt and deception, Mike interrupted, standing up to his full height. And if you think we're going to keep enabling that, nobody asked you to enable anything. Vincent's voice cracked with frustration. I never forced any of you to lend me money. You offered because it made you feel important, feel needed. Don't act like I manipulated you when you were all desperate to help the poor foster kid. The silence that followed was different from the others, thicker, more final. I could see understanding dawn on several faces. He wasn't even trying to deny it anymore. If anything, he seemed proud of what he'd accomplished. Get out, Uncle Ray said quietly. Both of you, get out of this house. Gladly. Vincent turned toward the door, then paused. And Josh, good luck getting your money back from us. Consider it payment for all those years of treating me like I wasn't good enough for you, your precious daughter. Evangeline followed him toward the door, but she stopped and turned back to look at me. For a moment, I thought she might stay, might choose the family that had loved and supported her over the man who'd spent years undermining it. I'm sorry you all feel this way, she said instead, but Vincent is my family now, and family forgives each other. The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded like finality. In the silence that followed, I felt something settle inside me. Not peace exactly, but a kind of clarity I hadn't experienced in years. The daughter I'd raised, the one who would have seen through Vincent's manipulations and chosen truth over convenience, was gone. Maybe she'd been gone for a long time, and I'd just been too afraid to acknowledge it. Josh? Carol's voice was gentle. You okay? I looked around the room at the faces of people who had shown up for me, who had risked their own relationships to stand up for what was right. Yeah, I said, and meant it. I think I am. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. And as always, thank you for watching.